Train was on time.
I'll call the meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Roll call, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Lively?
Here.
Commissioner Tonelli?
Here.
Commissioner Whitmer? Here. Chair Christensen?
Here.
Commissioner Lane?
Here.
Next on the agenda is approval of minutes of July 24. Does anybody have any correction? I do. First page, item 6, it says under the review of the transmittal letter to the council, it says the list will be reordered, reordered with mentioning the items with unanimous vote. And now that
We actually decided not to do that.
we decided not to do that.
Oh, okay.
And
Sorry.
the draft that I saw on the packet we were given of what appears to be the staff report to the council as well as our draft doesn't contain that.
Yeah. So the right thing was done, but it was noted wrong in the minutes. It's right here.
Thank you.
Good catch. It was brought up but not done.
So, all right, with that, may we have a motion on that with the,
Second is amended.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
You can't vote for Paul.
Right.
You weren't there.
I wasn't there.
You have to abstain. Isn't that right?
Technically, yeah.
Yes.
I would have let it slide, but that's fine.
Oh.
This could be an omen, you know.
All right. The next item is item number 3. This is for public comments for item for the subjects not being on the agenda. There's a limit of 3 minutes per person. Does anybody want to address the commission? I see none, so we'll move on to the next item, Commissioner's report.
And let me,
I don't have any.
All clear here? Nothing.
Okay, I'll just report that as last month, you saw that living within 500 feet of the Sacred Heart, I left the room and was told that I could not speak as an ordinary citizen. Last week, I was told that commissioners could not comment or speak at the city council meeting when a recommendation of the planning commission was before the council. This is contrary to what we have been used to, and obviously our practices might be lax. But I would appreciate receiving any sort of restrictions like that with the source listed. For instance, this Brown Act, give me the section, I don't want to read it. Brown Act, all the way through. Part of the Brown Act I'm aware of is serial. But I think these two things, there may be other items that are restrict one speaking as a commissioner. Also, I discovered that the staff, the town manager, has the power and can restrict our agenda. And of course, this was surprising to me. And I would like, again, what is the source of that power? Because I frankly thought that we were responsible to the council and among ourselves, any of the items that are listed as what the planning commission could deal with were just fine. And in the past, I think basically staff has made up the agenda So I have asked for certain things to be put on. So the town manager restricting the agenda is new to me, and I'd like the source of that.
Well, that's in his job description. I mean, that's the way it's always been. And I'm happy to take this up with you separately, but when we came in, we were told that the town needed to limit liability. That was a big goal for the town. We're rule followers. We don't make the rules, but we follow them and we try to help
Okay.
educate everybody as to them.
Well-
I am more than happy to provide all of those different rules and the citations and copies of them.
Fine.
We just want to play fair, that's all.
No, that's fine.
So,
We may disagree with the
of
rules,
course,
but.
I may
but-
disagree with the rules,
Yeah,
of course,
but
but
we will carry
we
them
just
out.
try to apply them evenly. That's why I apologize if that makes you feel limited. I'm happy to provide all those rules to you.
Sir, thank you. That's my report.
Could I have a copy of what you are going to provide to him? If
Yeah,
there is something,
Sure, I'm
I'd be
happy to.
interested in reviewing it.
Yeah, and here I thought my Brown Act training was so extensive. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of ethics rules, Brown Act rules, the basic Constitution of the United States. There's a lot of different things that are at play. And as they arise, or if you have questions on that, I'm always happy to provide the site
Sure.
to you. So I'll
Thank you.
try to catch the few that you've mentioned.
Bill?
I do have one more comment. The Civic Center Advisory Committee has been meeting with their appointed consultant, HMC, and there's an extensive schedule established by the consultant for a series of meetings to be held this fall, informational meetings regarding how the general plan is being put together, to get comments from town residents, and finally, late in December or early January, come up with a final plan. It's a very ambitious schedule, and there's a lot of other things going on this fall. So please tell your friends to be aware of what the schedule is and try and attend some of those meetings.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that because a couple times I've thought about going to them, and I was wondering if that would create a conflict if anything came to us. So I've been staying away from them. But prior to being on the planning commission, I attended some of those meetings. So if somebody's got a recommendation on that. But right now, I just erred on the side of not being biased in terms
The
of.
Civic Center Advisory Committee, so
Yeah.
Oh.
they can attend the meetings.
You can attend, yeah.
Can you
Okay.
speak?
I would request that you not actively.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's,
I like to say there are rules and then there's the appearance of impropriety.
right.
And I feel like sometimes you may not be strictly prohibited from doing something, but I think out of respect for your position,
Mhm.
sometimes it's better to think about how something might be perceived, and often that's just a gut reaction, a little common sense. And if you have anything more specific, we can always address that.
Sure. That's why I hadn't been showing up, because, not that I ever roll my eyes, but, that could be, that could be misinterpreted. So Mr. Lively, I appreciate the announcement of it, and I just wanted to know that I would want to go, but I am staying away from it for that reason.
There'll be a series of public meetings, and hopefully they'll be announced well in advance, so we can get good participation throughout the time.
Good.
Okay, can he comment on the?
If I may, just one more thing, just to kind of help with the gut reaction here. I think one way to think about it is, if a member of the public came to a meeting at which you're making a decision, and it's a very important role. We take it really seriously, that judicial capacity that you serve in, and it's really
Yeah.
unique to the Planning Commission and the City Council. If somebody came to this meeting and they felt like, oh, well, I saw Paul at this advisory committee meeting the other day and he really had a strong opinion, if they feel like ahead of time they already know your position on it, I think that's problematic, because you're supposed to come to the meetings, hear the all the testimony and everybody's different, all the information, and make an informed decision. If you're kind of out there spouting your view to the community, I just think it undermines your credibility, and I don't think you would want to be undermined that way.
That's
So,
the experience
That's a
I've had.
good explanation.
so, yeah.
Phil, I was interested in attending those meetings also, and I haven't gone, but I have looked for the minutes of those meetings, and they're not published. Is there some way that we can get them published on the town website?
The first first meeting with the consultants and the full CCAC is the 10th of September. It's a public meeting. There've been some subcommittee meetings, which are committees that are formed with less than a quorum. One's working on the library, one's working on what Paul's working on. And they're not public meetings, and they're just working committees. So the first meeting, the first big meeting, will begin to hear from the consultants what the space needs are, and they see them, will be the 10th of September.
Okay, so there'll be minutes from that meeting, is that,
Okay. We'll move on to staff report.
Thank you. The item is added to the agenda as a status report on the Planning Commission's letter to the City Council regarding the proposed Little League improvements to the baseball field at Palmer Park. You should have in your packet a copy of the staff report that went to the City Council for their meeting in August. Since we did not have a quorum, that meeting was canceled, and it's been rescheduled for September 4th at 5 o'clock, earlier than normal. And at that meeting, the intent is for the City Council to kind of walk through each item that the Planning Commission had a recommendation on, and then provide direction to staff on how to proceed. Based on the direction staff receives from the City Council, staff would work with Little League to draft the field use agreement. The name changed a couple of times, but essentially, the field use agreement, and work out the details of that document, and then bring that back to the City Council, ideally at their October meeting, I believe, if it's ready, for final action. After the City Council, if they were so to approve the field use agreement, then the detailed plans and specifications would be prepared by the Little League team. Those plans and specifications need to go back to the City Council for the, they don't authorize the bid. They'll be reviewed by, we had two different processes we were talking about with them, so I want to be clear. Depending on the direction of the City Council, okay? If the City Council decides that it wants the city to be the lead, the town to be the lead, and to construct it, then it would go back for a bid process. If they prefer Little League take the lead on that, which is what I believe staff is recommending, then it would go through the normal building permit review process, as well as review by the city engineer as a public improvement to the park. Go through the construction phase with inspections, and then the town would need to accept that as a public improvement, assuming it's to the satisfaction of the town. So that's the kind of full process of this project. Be happy to answer any questions on the status.
I see no questions.
Okay,
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 6, conditional use permit at 4 Heritage Court. This is continued from our last meeting in July. Catherine.
Good evening. The first item before you is a request for 4 Heritage Court, which was continued from the last Planning Commission meeting. The applicant is requesting a reasonable accommodation to allow the addition of handicapped accessible living space on the first floor to encroach into the required side setback. The proposal would consist of an 857 square foot addition and would encroach 9 feet 2 inches. The resulting side setback would be 38 feet 4 inches. With the addition, the house would be approximately 4,200 square feet, or about 10% of the lot size. Based on comments from the commission at the last hearing, the applicant has redesigned the proposal so that the addition does not encroach more than 20% into the required setback. The proposed addition would encroach about 19.4%. It's staff's opinion that the findings for the use permit can be met and that their request will not fundamentally alter the zoning code. The addition would meet all other resident setback requirements, and although there is room to add at the rear of the house, there are some constraints such as a swimming pool and existing heritage trees. The town arborist has visited the site after the last Planning Commission meeting and has no concerns with any of the proposed addition's impacts. However, does recommend that the tree protection plan as outlined by the applicant's arborist be implemented if you choose to approve it. To date, there have been no public inquiries on the project. We're also recommending approval of this item and a condition that restricts the ability for future additions to follow the newly created setback. I also wanted to point out up at your chairs we have a new format for our draft conditional use permit. Based on some input from Commissioner Lively, we've placed the findings at the top of the actual draft use permit. You'll also see it on the Middlefield item tonight. And so those are the findings that are outlined in your staff report. We're now, from here on out, going to be putting those on any draft approval documents. I'm available for any questions, as is the applicant. Thank you.
Do we have any questions?
Follow-up.
Thank you. I'll open the meeting now for any public comment. Do we have any? If not, I'll close the public hearing and ask the commissioners to speak on the subject. I'll start with you, Ed.
Yeah, I'm, first of all, I'm glad that we worked out a solution, I think that is good for the the longtime resident and the family, and it's, I think it's a very good accommodation. I like this, the way staff framed it for future usage with ongoing use of the application of our new guideline. So that puts us in a situation that we can have justification for this exception and compliance in the future. So I like exactly the way it came out, and I hope that the commission feels so, and I hope you live in the house happily.
All right. Phil, why don't I ask?
Yes, I'd like to add my congratulations, Mrs. Renner. I think you and your architect did an excellent job meeting the requirements we put on you last month. I know it distressed you last month when we were here, but hopefully today we'll fix that problem for you. I would vote for the conditional use permit.
I'd just like to reiterate the comments. I was not here last month, but in reading up on the history of how this is proceeded, just to thank you for your effort and cooperation and patience in getting this done.
My only concern would be light pollution. Is there any exterior lighting that would be on the neighbor's side? So, and I'm very pleased with it as well.
Certainly I would support this change. There's really no, with the trees on the boundaries, any lights even on that side would probably not be seen by the neighbor. So I would vote in favor of a motion to be made by one.
I'll do that. I move, I seem to be doing the motions.
Yeah.
I move the planning commission approve the conditional use permit at 4 Heritage Court for the reasons incorporated in the staff report and the draft conditional use permit.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The vote is unanimous. Thank you for being patient.
I love it when planning comes together.
I have a question for staff. How long is the appeal process?
And then, oh, I'm sorry. That's my
You
fault.
teed them up perfectly. Thank you.
10 days, you can appeal to decision to the council.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I wish to thank all of you for your job well done. As sad as I was last week when I walked, or last month when I walked out of here, I think the family thought it's even better. So I'm a brilliant designer here. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll see
The next item is the conditional use permit for Sacred Heart School. I must excuse myself. I'll be outside reading my book.
I will absolutely, I've got a list right here, the things I'm gonna send to you, I promise. No worries.
Phil will take over as chairman.
Kind of.
Scoot up a little bit. Okay. Whoop.
We're expecting a really good book report when you get back.
Syrian rebellion.
2 times now. Will that pass on?
No, sir.
Yes. report.
Thank you. The item before you, 150 Valparaiso, request from Sacred Heart Schools, is to reconsider the item from your last meeting. As you recall, at the previous meeting, Sacred Heart Schools had a request to substitute a mitigation measure that was identified in the environmental impact report and also contained within 2 different conditional use permits. One was for the middle school expansion and the other was for the new gym project. The mitigation measure that was identified was to do roadway improvements to improve the turning movement on and off the campus at different intersections in the town. Unfortunately, when the design details were prepared of that, we realized that there was significant removal of heritage trees would be associated with that project. So we were in conversation with Sacred Heart on what other options are there so that we're not taking out these heritage trees. And this TDM measure, which is transportation demand measures, were discussed, which have been implemented successfully at Menlo School. So we thought, well, that's something that's a great opportunity. Let's look further into that. So they engaged a traffic study to evaluate it, and it found to be more successful than the roadway improvements were expected to be. So therefore, we brought it forward to the Planning Commission at your last meeting. And some of the concerns I heard from the Planning Commission was kind of the enforcement, the unknown of, all right, they've implemented this for a year, but what's going to happen down the road? So we appreciated those comments, went back to Sacred Heart and said, okay, how can we beef up this a bit, respecting the Planning Commission's concerns? And a couple of items, we have a substitute condition that's suggested in the staff report, and that's shown as italics for the enrollment penalty provision. So annually, Sacred Heart Schools will report their traffic counts to the Planning Commission. If they fail to meet the objective criteria, in any 2 successive years, then after 2014, then they would be required to reduce their enrollment. And it's specified in here very specifically how that would occur. So it would be phased in over the next 3 years. And this is very similar to a condition that the Planning Commission approved for the Menlo School project. If their TDM measure fails, then this gets implemented. So we thought that tracked nicely as well. Sacred Heart Schools has agreed to this condition. And then the other item that I would like to change this evening is in the conditional use permit. Number 1, one of the commissioners noted we do have a typo in the date. So at the very beginning, and again, we have 2 conditional use permits. It should reference today's date, assuming you take action, which would be August 28th. And then if the commission so desires, you would substitute in the first one, condition 16D to the other condition that's listed in your report. As well, I want to add under 16B in that first use permit, undertake annual monitoring during the life of the project. So to be very clear that they need to submit those annual reports as long as they're in operation. And that would track on 16B, as well on the second use permit. I believe it's 15B, annual monitoring during the life of the project to assess compliance with the other conditions. So every year, they will need to submit to the Planning Commission the traffic study for your evaluation. And what I have before you is, just to be very clear on, I'm sorry, yes.
I just want to make sure I'm actually understanding where things are being changed.
Sure.
You're more sure where you are than I am. So the first one is on the date change. Is that on this very first page?
The first page of, yes.
All right, so it was
July 24th should change to August 28th.
All right,
If you so take action.
all right, got it. And the next one was on the, like, 4 page later, on section B.
Yeah, so we have on condition 16, which is in italics underlined.
All right,
I'm suggesting on B, you add the wording, it already has undertake annual monitoring, and you add during the life of the project.
okay, good,
And then if you look at condition D,
okay.
we have that suggested substitute condition contained in your staff report, which is the enrollment provision.
Okay, got it. So D was out, as it currently is, and it's replaced with the same as on the
Well,
screen sheet.
if you so desire.
Yeah, right.
That's what's being recommended,
Okay,
yes. And then if you want to go to the next
All
use
right.
permit document?
Okay. Is everybody else, am I the only slow on this one? Okay, all right.
A binder and tabs would have helped, I'm sorry.
That's right. Okay.
So then on the next one, it's the practice gym would be changing the date from July 24th to August 28th.
All right.
And then this one is condition 15.
Okay.
So
The
B,
page just before.
Okay. The first thing. B,
condition B, we would undertake annual monitoring
during the life.
during the life of the project. And then that's again where condition D, which is on the next page, will be substituted for the enrollment penalty provision.
All right.
And then I can just explain what I did here is I just took the motions that are in the staff report, the enrollment penalty provision, and just printed it out for you so it's real clear. I know sometimes we have a lot of pages in front of us. So this is if you wish to approve the document, we have 4 different actions for you to take. If you wish to deny the document, I gave a suggested denial motion in yellow.
Very handy.
And happy to talk about if you need to make any changes to those, we can discuss that. Just want to make that real clear for you. I don't know if I had anything else to add. Okay, sorry, I lost track there. Happy to answer any questions. Sacred Heart is here as well, and their traffic consultants.
Any questions, staff? You want to start?
Well, yeah, okay, I'll start. I have concern about the number 6,000. I researched the Menlo School EIR, and they came up with a ratio of, or I calculated a ratio of student, trips per student on a daily basis from their numbers, and it corresponds to the numbers that Sacred Heart published in their EIR dated April 2010, table 4G7. And that comes out to approximately 2.2 trips per day per student. When you multiply that by approximately 1,150 students, that comes out to be 2,400 trips per day. If we're setting our standard at 6,000 cars per day, I would suggest to Sacred Heart that they put a security guy at the gate and ask for a Sacred Heart ID, because I can't imagine that it requires 3,600 trips in and out of the campus to support 1,100 students. So these numbers are not correct. There's a mistake in the calculation somewhere. It can't be 6,000 trips per day. It just can't be. There's a tremendous security problem if there is.
And what's the current trip count?
Well, that count apparently is one that is compared to one that was done in 2008. And at that time, they had a number of 7,563, 7,563.
It just can't be.
I know.
Yeah, it just can't be.
I'll wait. Go.
Okay, so that's the concern on that. Secondly, I thought that last month we had worked out an agreement that everybody could live with, where we did traffic monitoring, and we were going to revisit it in 2 years, and like that. Then I guess some people didn't think we did it properly, and of course we're not lawyers, and it is somewhat true. And what the biggest argument I heard against it was that it was 2 mitigations. On page 9 of the staff report, there are alternatives listed, and the second alternative says that we could require construction of intersection improvements at one or more intersections in addition to implementing the proposed TDM program. And if if what we've suggested is 2 mitigations, this certainly is 2 mitigations. So I'm really confused as to why our suggestion would have been thrown out. Perhaps it needs to be reworked by the lawyers or whatever, but I don't agree that it can be thrown out based on 2 mitigations. Or else this second one is also illegal. And I have some, I have some little issues, but we can, those are the 2 big ones that I see in the whole thing, and I'm really not anxious to approve it as it is. I don't think we understand it well, and I don't think it's documented properly at this time.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Any comments?
No, I'm just gonna listen here for a bit, I might have something,
I think we all are.
Commissioner Lively, would you like me to take a moment and respond to?
Well, certainly.
I'm prepared to answer those. I think it's a complicated issue, and I think last time it may have been a little disorganized, so I think, oh, good, okay, let me make sure. I think it's a wonderful opportunity just to clarify a few things, so I think it's fine. There are a few misconceptions when dealing with sequent issues like this. It's a really complicated area of the law, it's really nuanced, I find it to be really annoying. So I understand if there's any misconceptions here. The number 6,000 was part of the initial EIR process. There was a draft, there was a whole process that went, back and forth in comments, opportunity for public comment, then it culminated in a final EIR, which was then certified. Once that's done, there's nothing you can do. I mean, the problem was identified, and then solutions were proposed that were accepted. So to a certain extent, we're really locked into things that have already been done that are beyond your control. I understand that might be deeply frustrating, but it is what it is. What we're here to talk about now is really just the issue of if one mitigation seems to be working better than the one that we're about to do that could require a subsequent EIR and some environmental impacts with the heritage trees, is that what you want to do to substitute one for the other? So I think there's an understandable desire to kind of look at this issue on the whole, but a lot of those issues were already addressed in the EIR process, and that's sort of what we're limited to. So I understand your frustration, but if you view it from that, maybe it makes a little more sense.
I don't understand,
Okay.
when you look at the alternatives that were proposed by city staff, it says, one of the alternatives is to require construction of intersection improvements at one or more intersections, such as Valparaiso and Elena, in addition to implementing the proposed TDM program.
Oh, you're talking
Is that
about
not
the
2
two
mitigations?
Oh, I can speak to that separately, absolutely. The way it works is you identify a problem and you find a solution. You can't overcorrect the problem. It wouldn't be fair to require them to do more to make it even better than what everybody agreed it needs to be. You solve the problem one time. And I don't think the intent was ever to apply 2 mitigations. From what I understood, it was if TDM at some point is not working, then another mitigation, you can tie that in, you can have a triggering event, like, I think staff has done a good job trying to make the town more protected, so that if TDM isn't working in the future, we will kick to this other provision because the TDM isn't working. So it basically, like what we're talking about right now, we're talking about 2 mitigations, but we're not talking about applying them simultaneously. Am I
Yeah, and I
understanding it
think
right?
one of the procedural concerns with applying the roadway improvements now as a condition and a requirement, or even requiring it if it fails in a couple of years, is we haven't done the environmental analysis that's required for that roadway improvement, since we now know it could have a significant impact on the environment. So if you wish to impose that requirement, you would need to direct staff to do the environmental analysis first, and then we could impose that condition. So that's one of the main reasons I brought it back to clarify, is because unfortunately, to impose that condition, we need to do an environmental analysis of the roadway improvement.
Okay, so now I need to follow up on your follow-up, if I could. Is that right? All right, so the the thing I took away from the discussion was that we were looking for this fallback, a fuse
Right.
approach, okay? So, and that fuse approach then comes up with a byproduct of having an environmental impact. Is it okay to waive the one until we find this other approach? Is that the problem? Or I don't understand.
There are, well, I think the problem is, we had option A,
Right,
the roadway improvement. It has become clear that that isn't a simple fix. It requires, because now there's all these trees involved,
right.
we can't just say, yes, if the TDM doesn't work, bang, we're gonna do option A.
Mhm.
It's not that simple anymore because we found it's gonna have a significant environmental impact. It becomes its own EIR issue on its own.
All right, so let me go back to, let's stop
Sure.
right there for a minute. So if we did nothing right now, they would be required to knock the trees down and make the changes.
I need to do a separate environmental analysis before they can do that.
Oh, so what happened was that all of a sudden, people saw how many trees were gonna be knocked
Correct.
out.
It
and that
was
a
not
new-
anticipated.
That was a
Time
new data, that is a new
Yeah.
data point.
Correct.
That is what
then
is-
affects the need right now. I
Yes.
got it. All right, so that's the part that I think was missing last week, was that the trigger of
That's
these
correct.
trees
Yes.
were assumed to be, by the way, last week I said, I was thinking that either we cut the trees out or we come up with a mitigation. And if the mitigation wasn't tight enough, then we had the backdrop of the original agreement. Now what we're saying, the original agreement is not sufficient to do without an EIR.
We need to do a separate EIR.
Okay.
Or mitigated negative deck. We have to do an environmental analysis before we can implement it or require it.
So-
So it's,
So that
we
was,
can't do that.
complicated.
It's not something we can't overcome. But we would need the time to study that and come back with that document before you can impose that condition.
so let me say it another way. The condition we prescribed in our agreement is not executable the way it is right now. All right,
Correct.
all right, so, all right,
Unless we added up.
And that's why it's come back.
right.
That's my main reason for bringing it back.
All right, so then there are two fallouts from that. So let's say that we have an agreement right now, and everybody's, and it's all CEQA and it's all lined up appropriately, but there's an environmental aspect of it that's newly discovered. How long a time would it take to do the environmental process? I mean, is it years or months?
Months.
Okay, all right. So
6 to 8 months.
all right, so during that time, what's the mitigation for the traffic? What kind of agreement do we have for the traffic that would build up during that time?